Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Check, check, check. Make sure I don't get this wrong because I don't want this to ever get butchered. Alright, just good. Alright, so I actually spent the time to type out this whole document because just did it now because I think it's fun. PoE1 Theory Crafty is very fun. Analysis of the classes, ascendancies, what's going on in the meta is very fun. And, you know, making your own little bet on what you want to play, and it's a huge part of the game, and kind of like identifying yourself in the world, like what you want to do and what you specialize in. And for me, it'll be a 4th league now for PoE1. I think I started 3.25 settlers, then played Frisia, played 3.26 with the mercenaries, in which I completely ignored the mercenaries. I never played with one, actually, ironically, strangely enough. And people liked mercenaries because you can have the Dordiani trick, which I didn't even want to use because the merc died all the time in maps, and I don't like someone following me around. And now 3.27 is here, and even though Trickster got a bit of a nerf, I'll still start it, I'll still play it. I don't want to play anything else because it's the best defense-oriented ES class in PoE1. This is, I think, is undisputed. You know, the most attractive class other than Trickster would be Jug, but I had played with Jug before, and it's a little more painful because I just think Jug is leaning hard in the strength stack, right? Attribute stack archetype, which is, I think, harder to pull off. And I don't like the visuals as much. I think Trickster looks cooler. Okay, so I'll just read out what I've written because I think that's the clearest thing, is that why is defense before offense better in PoE1? I think that's actually true. It's all fun and games when you're killing stuff and they can't fight back. But the moment you reach resistance, someone who doesn't die instantly, and that's a lot, unless you can dodge all their attacks consistently, in theory you are going to die if they have any kind of significant incoming damage. So, to survive what we say, like, harder or more difficult content, defense then becomes king. So it's cool to kill faster, what I call the win more situation, but when you get to the end game and you want to do content other people don't want to do, what really matters more is can you you have to survive that incoming damage and deal it back. And there is a sweet spot where if you get so nigh unkillable that you can overcome any content you'd like as long as you're willing to put in the time. Now, that won't be true if your opponent is healing so fast that your low damage can't even overcome it, or it's so ridiculous that it would take you like 5 hours of sitting there in one map to get a limited reward. Then that investment in defense and not so much in offense breaks down. But as long as the content is not taking that long, and it's hard enough that other builds will shy away from it, there's going to be a niche for this kind of archetype. So, that's why Trickster, because Trickster has the right tools for that. You can do it with other classes, but Trickster's the best, I think, still. In PoE2, I think you can get away with some bad defense by dodge rolling. And dodge rolling is pretty strong in PoE2 because you're iframing through a lot of projectiles, right? And that's strong. I mean, if you keep dodge rolling, you can't attack in that situation, but like you're only hittable for a brief duration out of the time you're on a screen. That's like a temporary invincibility. That's very strong, but you don't get that in PoE1. Dodging is just not really a thing. The speed, the way the game operates, so it's feasible early game and campaign. But once you get into like those kind of like weird maps, juice content, harvest, like there's no dodging. It's like a damage simulator, right? And this damage simulator attribute becomes higher and higher. And when you get to like Valdo's maps, if you've seen the footage, it's a straight up damage simulator. Like if you don't have the numbers, no amount of leap slamming or jostling or skill swapping is going to help you. You either have the numbers to overcome it or you don't. It becomes like a mathematical game. So that's why in those kind of builds, you spend more time in PoB, trying to identify your weaknesses, why you died, which type of damage killed you, etc., etc. You have to know your enemies and the feared. And yeah, so I think it's unfeasible in high-end content to kill everything before they kill you. What I call BVR kills, beyond visual recognition. I think this is a term they use in like the fighter jets actually. The design principle between the F-35. Why it's not necessary for the F-35 to dogfight is because in that kind of world, if you can eliminate the enemy in one shot before they even see you, why do you even need any kind of defensive maneuvering? You know, you think like a sniper rifle or like a sniper, right? If he shoots the guy out of range, there's no need for a sniper to be agile. But flip side is if that's not true, if you're unable to kill the enemy before they approach you, and now they're in your face, now you're in big trouble. So the theory is that in high-end content, you can't do the beat. Have you ever seen Valdos where people just shoot everything around them, and they never get touched? You never see that. It's always like a damage simulator. Like you can do it, but then you run into resistance somewhere on the line, and that's where you have to play the defense game. So why defense is so high? The basic formula is this: you have the Shield Aegis Aurora, very, very, very good item. I mean, it's strong, but you need a lot of things to make. You need that Iron Reflexes, high ES. You go Chaos Inoculation, 90 all res. If this is hard, but you try for that, and Uncap Leech. You put them all together, you can't be killed easily, right? I have clips of that. You just can't be killed. It takes time to get there, but you'll get there. And actually, like you'll actually like in those high-end maps, if you have like a really strong enemy, you kind of don't want to kill the small mobs because the small mobs can't hurt you anymore. The small mobs are they're like mini clerics. Actually, their hits, although they visually look like they're hitting you. You could think of them as mini clerics that are healing you every time because the damage they do is so low that your block is so high that it's a net heal for you overall. So like you might see the clips where like when your defense goes high enough, that is your resist numbers goes high enough, your recovery goes high enough too, like you have a high enough block and armor, then over time smoothing, the incoming damage that you keep taking will start healing you. And it's the dangerous one big hits that start mattering now. And those are not really that common. So, okay. So, the only threat is basically dots when isolated, right? So, like, if you think of, like, the Maven fight with their pools, Cyrus with the whirlpools, like, nothing will save you there. I mean, if you had, like, flat out, like, just basic life regen would help you. But those, because they're so visually clear, you can just don't step on them, right? Even that's part of the game. That part, you can, reflexes matter. So if you don't play stupid and don't step in those pools, then you'll be fine. So anyway, so Aegis Aurora, enough block, spell block, I think a bit of an underrated stat, and enough armor, you get to heal on small hits, that's massive. Massive. That means you ignore all the small hits. That means white mobs are healers for you now. And you have to be afraid of basically the big, the turbo rares, or your bosses obviously because they hit you really hard. You basically ignore an entire class of damage called the small hit. And why Molten Strike? It doesn't have to be this league. There might be more options. Yes, because of the new Wall of Force that can shotgun existing skill. I mean, that'd be kind of fun to explore, actually. I don't even know because no one knows the exact skill gem data. I think it's not released yet as of this time of writing. But if nothing is there, I would fall back to Molten Strike because I think it's hard for GG to balance it. Because if you shotgun the projectiles, which is very unique, like it's generally speaking, like for the end games, when you want to do like a high single target, you need like a shotgun, I think, effect. Either that or you scale something. Like I know with like Frenzy of Onslaught, you'd scale Frenzy charges to the moon, but like that's a different type of thing. But Molten Strike, the unique thing is slower proj speed and less AoE, slower proj speed, and it concentrates the damage in one little spot. And with return projectiles, like Nimbus or even Shrapnel Specialist for 50% effect, you get like they return, right? So you double the shotgun effect with that as well, which is absolutely insane, right? I mean, that's why MSOZ, the Zenith version, was so strong. But Molten Strike is strong, very strong too. I used to prefer Splitting Steel because it has a similar effect with less dependency on, let's say, slower proj. You actually want to have higher AoE. If you could have like massive AoE, Splitting Steel would be amazing. I don't know if Splitting Steel could be made into a play here. If Wall of Force is such that you could detonate all the splits from Splitting Steel in one target location, it could use Splitting Steel as well. And Splitting Steel, because it's not a strike skill, you have less gems to put into it, and like you don't need, let's say, multi-strike, which is an expensive option. So like it's more of a budget option, I think. And Splitting Steel did really well. I mean, I remember using it in 3.25, and it did really well. Just they gutted the skill because it doesn't return anymore, and yet if you could use Wall of Force to just like you slap it on top of the boss, and all the projectiles that radiate from them detonate immediately, in essence creating a very localized, like, you dump the AoE effect, just that would be amazing too. I mean, you could run either Molten Strike or, and I would go for Splitting Steel in that situation. If Wall of Force has no cooldown, if it's generous enough that you can rely on it every time, and it would play very well into the focus setup with the helm, which I'll describe. Because Splitting Steel had much better AoE clear than Molten Strike, for sure. I mean, so, and then also because you don't need return proj, you would save big on Nimbus. So that's actually one alternative. It all depends on how good the Wall of Force is. I hope it's good, because using another skill, I really hope it's good. I mean, it would be almost a staple in the shotgunning of projectile sting. So that's a big question mark. So I wrote it down here. I think, where was it for this league? Holy, I wrote a lot. Okay. It's that complicated. So excelling mostly at ultimatum. I remember doing a lot of ultimatums. It's very easy to do ultimatums with this. You can farm the catalysts. Harvest too. It excels at harvest for sure, because harvest is rippy, and it's about just standing there and running a damage simulator, and this build is very good at that. So harvest is a very easy moneymaker. Just gets kind of boring, and ultimatum is good. Volatile is good. Uber bossing, it's very good. It's one of the best volatile farmer, if you ask me, because of high defense, and it doesn't do good at any kind of mapping or legion type. Those mechanics are really bad for this. You don't want to do heist. And funnily, I do Alva. I did a lot of Alva with this, but Alva is not that great of a moneymaker, I believe, in the end. I mean, it's later in the league, so I mean, it's basically good for any kind of content that sends really hard enemies at you, like individually hard enemies, right? One-on-one scenarios. So anyway, okay. So some of the cool little like tricks are like tinctures, but people should know this by now. Like if you activate the tincture is a must-have, because when you need the damage spike and you activate it, usually you use the focus and tincture together, and it boosts your damage by 2 to 3x, and it has a massive effect on your boss killing speed. So it's not that expensive an item usually. People don't want to push extra buttons, but it's so good that you can't ignore it. And it's exclusive to elemental damage, I think, right? So curse is also very powerful, right? Because it's like increase their damage taken. So it's like a multiplier on your damage. So you get both connectivity and LE weakness. I don't know, it's probably 40-60% more damage. You can't ignore that. That's like more than an ascendancy node, right? So pretty good. And focus on helm, I love it very much because you get instant cast time for certain spells on a cooldown. It's perfect for that occasional burst, and the cooldown is generous. It's like 5 seconds. I don't remember what it is. So when you want to burst a boss down, you just proc the focus, and like all the spells get triggered out. That's pretty neat. Yeah. So why not MSOZ? Because two-hander, you can't use Ephemeral Edge, and your favorite Juggernaut, and the gearing is way too much. It's so expensive on Juggernaut. I don't know how people stomach that. Right, so Iron Reflexes, that's a cute trick. The Keystone, you take it for armor. It's not good in PoE 2, but PoE 1's very good. I think it's good because you have Aegis Aurora in PoE 1, and Evasion in PoE 2 is much better because it does spells and attacks. So it's good. Actually, when I disabled this by mistake, I noticed like a huge survivability difference. Like if you unspec it for whatever reason. So block a little bit OP. I think OP, yes, block is really good because I had a situation where like you had a big ES pool, but if you just test unequipping your shield, I like instantly vaporize. So like the shield recovery on block holds your ES at a stable position. If you walk like a simulator, like a ton of small mobs are smacking you all the time. This is probably most prominent in Delirium maps, and where like your damage is being gimped. So you're getting hit like hundreds of times per second, right? Well, Aegis Aurora is a stabilizer for your ES. Without it, you just gradually just die without leech, right? To counteract incoming damage. So it's like a passive stabilizer for the incoming damage for small hits. Spellblock is even better, right? Because yeah, spellblock is huge. I always look for defense layer to use spellblock. And therefore you can dump spell suppress. It's a luxury at that point. And Ghost Dance, I know that a lot of evasion-based tricksters take. I think Aegis Aurora is a replacement for that. It's even better because it doesn't have a rate limit. So the Ghost Dance is like every X seconds you can only do it. This one has no rate limit. It's uncapped. You can get smacked forever and never, never, and you never you never die. So, and the thing is, nothing disables your Aegis Aurora recovery. It's like an untouchable stat. Leech is also OP, right? If you're hitting monsters constantly, your recovery is insane. Your ESP just flies up all the time. And with the uncapped, which actually does matter for Trickster, but in a grand scheme of things, it may not be that super important. It's just what else would you want defensively, right? It smooths out incoming damage after you stop leeching, which is pretty good. Okay, so a lot of POBs will show like a huge ES pool, which is very expensive. You got to get those simplex amulets. Those are really good end game aspirational items, but you can do really well with like a 10k, 14k pool if you scale other stuff, which is actually more economical because ES is just a buffer to mitigate spike damage. If someone does like 50k damage after resistances to you, and you don't have if you do 20k, well, only the 30k guy will survive. The 20k will just evaporate, right? Because you don't have that. The one big hit will kill everybody. And then there's scaling difficulties. The higher you go, the more diminishing returns kicks in. Example, 10 to 13k ES is hard, but the damage. So basically, the law of diminishing returns. You get way more payoff for your investment at early stages. I believe the sweet spot is about 10k to 14k. This 10k mark is about the sweet spot for you can do a lot of content with that. And because they rely on the amulet slot being like a what is it, those special amulets, and the rings and all that being those heist versions, they're expensive. But even early on, you get Voice of Storm, Siobhan's Revelation. They're really good items for that kind of build. Yeah, okay, so a lot more details here, but all in all, okay, yeah, an endgame, Valdos and Uber Cyrus are from my memory, the best, most profitable way to get a Mage Blood. I mean, you get there early. For Cyrus especially, nobody wants to do Cyrus early league. He's hard. And Uber Cyrus even less so. Uber Cyrus is very hard. And Uber Cyrus, because of the way the last phase works, if you don't have one step ahead, it's annoying. You get slowed to the point where you're crippled in the last stage. So one step ahead, and it turns the fight into a manageable situation. It really does. So that's why when I was playing the Ascendant version of this kind of archetype, I missed that a lot. And even though that Ascendant version had other, more power in other ways, the lack of one step ahead in certain situations is killer. You get slowed so bad, you can't attack back, and you just die slowly, right? So one step ahead keeps you alive, keeps you in the game, especially for Cyrus in those kind of fights. If you can't get slowed, you're basically you stabilize your internal condition so that you're consistent in the way you attack and move, and that makes life a lot easier for those kind of things, right? And also because Petrify mods and that kind of dumb shit that they're just horrible if you don't have one step ahead. And Valdos I find is a really interesting map type of content because it's a deterministic way to make divines because there's always going to be a margin between what they sell the map for and the price of the divine, obviously, because if there's no margin, why would you ever buy it? And the other one is if it was that easy to run it, then they would just do it themselves. But they don't want to do it because they think it's too hard. So the difficulty will represent the margin between the like what they sell it for and what the thing will be priced at. So it's just naturally that way because nobody wants to run a hard map for a lousy divine, right? The harder the map, no one wants to run it. So if you can run a very hard map, and especially if you can face the risk of the void maps. So in the last league, I made a lot of money off the replica Alberon's maps because it had a void line. And if you are familiar with the how you would die in that map, and you know you could never die in that map because you have all their gear, then you can run that map over and over and over again and make 3-4 divines constantly in profit every time. I mean, there's still going to be like losses here and there, but like some of these void maps have great margins because people are just too chicken to run it. And as long as you go like, C'est la vie, you can run the whole, you can do it all over again. Although, to be fair, I would never run those kind of maps early league because if you lose your character early league, it's disastrous. Once you get tired of the league, it's time to play with void maps, right? To get your blood racing again and have fun. So anyway, usually other players are not. I realize from last league that people told me that not many people want to run Valdos, although there are people who do this. And once there's enough players doing it, that would be enough to flood the market, and it's hard to make profit there. But usually early league is like not many people are doing this, right? And the profit margins are the best early league for sure. I remember like about 1 or 2 months into the league, it was really hard to find a profitable Valdos map. And you also have to know the maps. And I don't know if they were cycling through the maps this league because I thought they were supposed to get submissions for these maps. And yet 3.26, the maps were exactly the same as 3.25. I don't know if they are opening rounds of submissions every X versions, but if it's the exact same pool, then I have a good memory of what are the good or bad maps for Valdos. And the ones that make you good profit, the ones that people can't run that easily. So the runner for Valdos are usually going to make consistent profit as opposed to like, if you just open puzzle boxes. There's always going to be a kind of a symbiotic relationship with the openers. There's some people who are so rich, they just open shit tons of puzzle boxes, and they're the ones who feed you the stuff that you can make money off of, right? So without those people, which I find are usually chieftains for whatever reason, the righteous fire people, maybe. Without those people, like you couldn't run this kind of strategy because there'd be no Valdo maps to buy in a market. So anyway, yeah, you have to probably buy them not through the. Actually, with async trading, that might change Valdos, huh? I don't know. That's interesting. You could buy more. I have to see. Anyways, buying or selling vaults can be really like annoying sometimes, but we'll see what happens this patch. Okay. And before Valdos, Uber Cyrus is the best fight for sure. He drops Awakener Orbs and the other one, the Crimson Jewels, the what's it called? The one that gives you those free passives in the radius. I don't know what the item is called. And Crown of Eyes is valuable sometimes. I don't know. I don't remember. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be Cyrus. League might change things up, but you can always do the hard bosses. I think Cyrus and Maven are the best, and avoid avoid Exarch, avoid Eater, which favor the high damage builds, the glass cannons. Yeah. And I wouldn't do the Elder or Eater just because they're annoying. They take way too long to fight. So Maven and Cyrus have the highest profits, I thought. So, right. And that's about it. That's a wrap up for why Trickster. I don't see why I couldn't find an argument to pick anything else, because as some PoE experts have pointed out, this is not true for PoE 2, but for PoE 1, defensive ascendancies, or that have a strong defensive nodes on them, that make them really tanky and unstoppable. Those I think tend to do much better at the super end game. But it depends what the end game is like. Like some people want to zoom through a map. They'll cap the difficulty at a lower stage and just run it a lot faster. Whereas this one's more about, well, you can do harder content. It doesn't have to be fast, but by virtue of it not, by other builds can't do it, there's profit to be